All right, welcome to the stream. Most people don't have a discipline problem, I don't think, and they don't have an intelligence problem either. They have a learning problem. If you're anything like me, you were never actually taught how to think clearly, learn effectively, or update your beliefs. And so what happens is you stay stuck, and it's not because you can't grow, but it's because you don't have a system for growth. And that's what I want to walk you through today. It's not any motivation stuff, not any hacks or any shortcuts. Just a simple framework you can use to start teaching yourself anything. So, what I'm going to do is just want to I wanted to go through that intro real quick, and I am going to just bear with me because this stream is going to be a little bit different from any other stream. I'm going to make sure that YouTube's screen sharing thing, everything works. So, hopefully, we don't have any technical difficulties. If there's any issues with the audio, please let me know down in the chat. But I'm going to see, hopefully, everything rolls smoothly. So, let me get everything pulled up here and then we'll roll right into it. Each of these steps fixes a specific problem that most people run into that they're trying to improve. And if you're missing just even one of these, progress seems to be really difficult. All right, so let's start with mindset. Most people have heard of they've heard of growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, but they don't really understand how it plays out day to day, right? So your beliefs drive your actions, they drive decisions, and they drive results, right? So we know the fixed mindset is where you think that, Carol Dweck came up with this through her research. And it's like when you have the fixed mindset, you believe that you're not good at something. But a growth mindset is someone that believes that they can figure something out, right? So all things are really that you want to learn is just like a skill that just it requires effort, but you can eventually figure it out. And so the core idea is you don't rise to your goals. There's a deeper part, most of us miss. Your mindset isn't just about what you say out loud, it's the beliefs that you're carrying under the surface. And a lot of those beliefs are formed from growing up and from past experiences. So if you're trying to improve your life, but you're operating from limiting beliefs, you're basically fighting against yourself. All right. So you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your beliefs. So I'd ask you, let me know if you're live or if you're here live right now, or let me know down in the comments on the replay. What's one belief that is that's holding you back? For me, I've had plenty of them that have held me back from things like thinking that I wasn't good at. Like I remember specifically whenever I was getting into reading, I just did not care about reading in school. And anytime someone mentioned like, "Hey, you should read this book," I was immediately turned off, and I just say like, "Hey, I'm not good at reading. That's just not my thing." And eventually, by telling myself that enough times, it kind of turned into this belief that basically just kind of hypnotized me into believing that that was actually the case. And that's where the growth mindset kind of meets the belief thing, right? So when you have a fixed mindset, you know that, well, your mentality is like, I'm not going to put forth the effort because if I put forth the effort, then it's going to show, like, I'm going to show my flaws. And so it's not worth doing that. I don't want to take any risk because I don't want to expose my true skill set or who I am because I define myself based off of, how I see myself in the world. Whereas the growth mindset is just thinking like, hey, these beliefs can be changed over time through effort. And that's by outworking yourself out, as Alex Ramosi would say, or like just putting in the work and practicing and putting in the reps. All right. So again, let me just make sure. I think we just backtracked, but yeah, what limiting belief is holding you back? So here's the process that I go through to kind of work through those limiting beliefs, right? So first you want to do is you want to catch that belief and you want to question the belief, right? So something's going to happen in your life. There's going to be some resistance. You're going to have some resistance to doing things. And let's just talk specifically about the example would be like self-education, right? For me, I've seen a lot of things like self-education doesn't work, right? You need to go to school to get your education because it's like it's going to be a lot easier. You're going to have accountability. And then what you want to do is you want to question that belief and then replace that belief with something useful. So instead of having that fixed mindset, where it's like, I'm not smart enough to be able to learn this specific skill, look at it as like, I I'm just not smart enough yet. You add yet to the end of that sentence and it completely changes the overall definition or whatever you want to call it, right? It takes it from the fixed mindset to the growth mindset. And so replace that limiting belief with something useful like yet, right? So everything is just based, you adopt that skill. And so over time, what you'll do is, beliefs, the way it was described to me is it's kind of like a scale, right? Over on one side, you have like this negative belief, and over here, you have the positive belief. What we want to do is we want to stack rocks over there on the positive side, and that's through experiences. Now, I'm not going to go down like the whole road of like doing affirmations and everything like that. Some people are all about affirmations. I'm really indifferent to it. I've tried affirmations at one point in my life, but really, the ultimate thing is just like the experience, like going out and just practicing and improving over time. That's really been the trick for me to kind of just build that positive association and really start to stack those rocks on the positive side, or that belief that you're trying to establish there. Right. So that's the first step. We covered mindset. If you got any questions about mindset, let me know down in the chat, or you can let me know down in the comments below. Um, but yeah, this is what you want to start noticing that internal dialogue. And when you say things like, I can't do this, or I'm not good at this, I want you to pause and then question that belief and ask yourself, is it actually true? Or is this something you've just repeated over time? Again, for the longest time, I told myself I wasn't good at reading, or I wasn't any good at school. And that just simply wasn't true. I just wasn't willing to put forth the effort. And you want to replace that belief with something useful, nothing fake, no fake positivity, or something that's actually functional. And instead of I'm bad at this, you want to use something like I'm still learning this, or adding yet at the end. And this is key. The key is to just the key is repetition. And you don't change beliefs once, you change them through consistency over time. All right. So that's it for the mindset piece. The next step, now I'm just sliding through here, and all right. Sorry again. Apologize for technical difficulties. This isn't going to be perfect. This is the first time I've done this type of stream. And I'm like, have like a script here because I'm trying to be respectful of your time. And I'm also just trying to make sure that I'm keeping this as concise as possible. And I have a tendency whenever I'm doing like live to ramble. So I want to be respectful of your time. And I have the information here, but I wanted it to not be overwhelming on the slides and stuff. So again, the next step is going to be identifying the problem. So this sounds simple, but it's where most people get stuck. Most people are solving the wrong problem. And that's because most people try to solve surface level problems. For example, I want to be, oops. For example, oops. Sorry. For example, I want to be more productive. Okay, why? And then, you want to go through the why test and repeatedly ask yourself until you find the root, right? And then, as you go down that why chain, you're going to start to get somewhere, right? The real problem wasn't productivity, it was overwhelm. And clarity is what removes a lot of friction. If you're solving the right problem, you're already halfway there. So you've ever like little kids will do this all the time. They'll ask why. But if you have a problem and you're trying to figure out ultimately what we're trying to do here is identify if it's really a problem. We're trying to filter for actual problems, or to figure out like the best solution for the problem. Because a lot of times in my experience, I'll think that I need to fix this one thing for like, I'll think that like this YouTube video, just like the information in the YouTube video was bad. But then I'll ask myself, why do I think that? And then I'll be like, okay, well, because the YouTube video didn't do good. And then I'll break that. I'll be like, okay, well, why didn't the YouTube video do good? And then, so that makes me go and look into the analytics. And I'll be like, okay, well, the average view duration was actually really good. So meaning like this video, the performance over time, it's people were watching, the people that clicked on the video were watching for the full length of the video for the most part. And so it made me look a layer deeper. I was like, okay, well, they're doing that. Well, why is that happening? And so, or I would ask, why is the video not doing good, even though it has good average view duration? And then I'll just go and I'll look at the click-through rate for the video, and I'll say, oh, Well, people aren't clicking on the video. So it's a packaging issue or it's an idea issue. And so what we're trying to do is a lot of times in my experience, I've tried to solve the wrong problems and like certain areas of my life. So trying to nail down that core of like, what is the root of the problem and how can we solve it? Now, but the question is, how do you actually find the real problem? Well, what you want to do is you want to write down the problem as you see it. An example is I'm not productive. And you want to ask, at least 3 to 5, like do the why test and ask yourself why at least 3 to 5 times. And each answer becomes the next question. And then you want to stop when you hit something emotional or behavioral. That's usually the root. And once you find it, you want to turn it into something clear and into a clear, simple target. If the problem is like overwhelm, the solution becomes simplifying, not working harder, right? If you're overwhelmed, do you think that the solution should be working harder? Probably not. Well, why is this important to identify the problem? Well, if we're going down this, how does this all come together? Well, we're talking about self-education, we're talking about reading, we're talking about learning. And a lot of times if we spend a lot of time, like time is one of our most valuable resources. And if we spend a whole lot of time solving the wrong problem, well, we spend a lot of time wasting time. And so what we want to do is if there's certain areas of your life that you're trying to improve or just try to just, further develop, then it's important to identify the correct problem. If you don't really get to the core part of the problem, well, you spend you'll get some advice from somebody else, and then you kind of waste your time on things that aren't really going to move the needle. So now let's talk about learning the truth. And again, before I go too much further, I just want to say if you have any, questions on the why test or anything like that, it's very simple. Just go down, I can think of something off the top of my head here. I'll say that I need to be working out more, and then I'll ask myself why, and I'm like because I want to be healthier. And then I'll ask myself, okay, well, why do I want to be healthier? And then, I think you get the point, right? I want to be healthier because I want to live longer. Why do you want to live longer? Because I want to be around for my kids. I want to be able to do things for my kids. So you get the point, right? But that's the why test, and apply that to anything in your life, because this leads us to the next step, right? Because now that we understand the problem, we can approach learning and figuring out the solution to our problem, and it starts by learning the truth. Right. So now let's talk about learning the truth. We live in a world where there's more information than ever, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. So there's two realities. You have subjective reality and then you have objective reality. And subjective is going to be opinions and assumptions, and objective is going to be your facts and your truth. Not to insult anyone's intelligence, but just so that we're clear. But if you build your thinking on bad information, everything built on top of that is shaky, right? Bad inputs lead to bad conclusions. So Charlie Munger has, he talks about something called the man with a hammer syndrome, or the man with a hammer problem. And if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so what you do is you try to approach solving all problems with that one specific method, or that mental, or that specific that specific solution applies to all things. So what we want to do is we want to think from first principles. And so what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, what do I know for sure? And then build from there, so that you get closer to the truth, right? Not assumptions, right? So what are the things that we know are true? And you want to just go as deep as you can possibly get, and then reason up from there. Again, first principles thinking is not anything new. People have been talking about philosophers and in philosophy, they've been talking about, thinking from first principles forever. That's why a lot of people go to the classics. They'll start with reading about Socrates, and then they'll kind of work their way up, and then they'll draw their own solutions based off of what they've learned. And so getting to the root of it and knowing, and again, we're going to talk about this more in a bit. And I'll talk about that, like find the sources and stuff like that here soon. But what you want to, do is just ask, what do I know for sure? And then build up from there. So how do you actually get closer to the truth? Well, there's 4 things you can do. All right. So first thing is you want to slow down your consumption. All right. Don't just accept information. I want you to pause and think about it. Right. Anything, information overload is like overeating. Right. When you put too much information in your head, your mind just becomes just bloated. And what you want to do is you ask better questions. How do we know this is true? And what is this based on? And then we want to go to to primary or credible sources, not just summaries or opinions, right? A lot of people will just like, hey, just read the book summaries or listen to the book summaries or get the opinions of others. And look for people who have actually done the work. That's what we want to do, is look for those who have done the thing that we're trying to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cross-check that information. If multiple credible sources say the same thing, you're probably getting closer to the truth, right? We're not just taking at face value what we get from ChatGPT. Granted, ChatGPT can be a good resource, but again, we're going to cross-reference that with something else to validate it, right? To make sure that the scientific study was actually a legit scientific study, and that just checking from multiple sources. And most importantly, what you want to do is you want to be skeptical, and you want to even be skeptical of your own thoughts, right? When somebody tells you something, like, again, you don't want to be, I think the word is pessimistic. Like, you don't want to be like, you want to be skeptical of the information. Like, so when somebody tells me something that they heard about, I'll ask them, okay, oh yeah, really? Where did you hear that? And a lot of times what happens is it's like, I got this from this headline. And then, it's just like, it's a huge mess of information that's not helpful at all. And so the news can be a source where they get their information from. It could be social media. It could have been like an influencer that they enjoy watching. And so you have to be just really careful where the sources you're getting your information from. But I'll talk about that more here soon. But the first thing I'm going to do is just, again, slow down your consumption, ask better questions, and you make sure you're using credible sources, and always cross-check the information, right? So we talked about mindset so far, identifying the problem, learning the truth. Now we're going to get into, let's talk about how to actually learn, right? So educating effectively. Consuming is not learning, all right? Most people consume information, but they don't actually learn it. Reading, watching, listening, that's input. Learning is recall, explaining ideas, and applying what you actually learn, right? So recalling the information, active recall, explaining them in your own words, and actually going out and taking action. Real learning, again, like I said, it's like, can you recall it? Can you explain it? Or can you apply it? And so, yeah, book summaries, what they'll do is they'll give you conclusions, and they'll feel efficient, but they skip the understanding. And then so instead, what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, like, as you're learning, you want to ask, what did I learn? Can I explain it? Right? Can you recall it? And how do I use it? Right? How can I apply it? Or how did I actually apply it? Again, for me, I'll give you an example. What I do is, like, when I'm reading a book, the first thing I want to do is I'll close the book and I'll do my 3-2-1 method, right? So what's 3 key ideas? What's 2 questions like 3 key ideas from the chapter I just read? What's 2 questions that I have for the future of the book? And then what's one thing that I can take action on the next 24 to 48 hours? And the reason why is because, well, when you recall the information from memory, you're strengthening that knowledge versus just like transcribing the information from your book to your notes. But when you're writing it in your own words, you're tapping into elaboration. Again, all this stuff is covered in the book Make It Stick, which talks about the learning science. But you are actively recalling and you're strengthening that knowledge. It's essentially like testing yourself from like when you were in school and you had to take a test on a book that you read back in the day. I'm not sure if kids are doing that. You know, my little girl, she's not quite in school yet. So I could just be like showing my age here. But anyways, explaining things in your own like words taps into elaboration, which is good. And then applying gives you real world feedback, right? So you're forced whenever you take something practical from a book and then you go out into the real world and you apply it, you're creating that feedback for yourself. Like, okay, this is what I know, or this is what I think I know, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to apply this, and I'm going to get some sort of feedback that's going to tell me going to reinforce, like, hey, yeah, you do know, or it's going to give me the feedback like, hey, actually, you don't know as much as you think you do. But that goes back to the whole growth mindset thing. Is like you're willing to take risks because you're putting on the hat that like I am the lifelong learner. I'm not defined by my failures. It's inevitable that I'm going to make mistakes, right? So going out and applying is another form of active recall. So the core idea is better processing, not more information. The more you consume, it's just like it's gonna just go, it just becomes just bloats your mind. So how do we actually learn something in a way that sticks, right? So again, we want to, in order to learn, we're going to read books, we maybe watch some educational content, or we listen to like a podcast, we're listening to an audiobook. When you recall, again, I've walked through that process. I won't beat that up too much, but you just want to close the book or pause the video and ask yourself, what did I just learn? Not replay it, not just, but actually just recall. Another thing you can do is you can have ChatGPT just create like a 20 question test for you. That's another way that you can do it based on the book that you're reading. Or again, you may not be able to do that for the specific chapter you're on, but maybe that's something you can do for the end of a book that you read. And then explain, right? So you can say it out loud, you can write it down in your own words, right? This is where essays come in, or you can make a video about it. There's other ways you can do this. If you don't feel like typing, you can do speech to text on a Word document, and you can just kind of talk to the Word document. You can record a video for yourself to keep in your phone. The sky's the limit. You can do a voice memo, but explaining it, that taps into like the Feynman technique, right? So where you're like teaching what you've learned, and explaining it in your own words. They say that if you can't explain it simply, then you most likely don't understand it. And that's okay, because that just shows when we don't understand something, that just means we just need to work on it a little bit more. And then the last thing is apply it, right? Use it in real life as soon as possible. And if you can't explain it simply, again, like I said, you probably don't understand it yet. That's the gap that you want to focus on. All right. So we've covered how to educate yourself effectively. Again, let me know if you have any questions down in the chat. If you're watching on the replay, let me know down in the comments. And I'd love to know your thoughts. Is there any pushback that you would give me? Again, this is just a simple system that I put together, and I may make another like more concise video on this. I'm not sure. I wanted just to come on here and to get you all's feedback and to see if this is something that's you think is helpful. This is kind of my system for like my self-education process. And it's, again, it's served me well. I feel like I'm at a point to where, we're going to talk about this last piece here soon. But it's served me well. And I'm always learning new skills and always trying to learn new things, and ways to further, develop my process. So with that being said, again, let me know down in the chat what your thoughts are. Let me know down in the comments if you're watching on the replay. But let's roll into the next piece, right? So this is staying consistent, right? Consistency, it's not motivation. When it comes to being consistent, the problem isn't energy, or I'm sorry, the problem is not time. The problem is energy, right? Think of energy like a bank account, right? You start, think of it, you just spend it on and you're going to spend that, like that bank account, the money in your bank account. If you had $100, you're spending that money every time you're scrolling, every time you give into distractions, every time you have to make decisions. And you're going to spend that throughout the day, right? So again, poor sleep's another one. Junk food is another one, right? So if you don't get, 6 to 9 hours of sleep every night, that's going to affect your energy levels. Eating junk food, the quality of the inputs affects the quality of the outputs. So by the time you're trying to improve, you're drained, or you're trying to work on whatever your self-education thing is. And the low energy is what leads to low consistency. So what's the solution? Well, the biggest thing is to protect your energy. I realize we've been going for about 30 minutes. I kind of flew through this, but again, I hope I'm not going too fast for anybody. You guys let me know down in the chat if I'm moving too quick. Protect your energy, and build systems. It's not about like motivation or like, it's about having some sort of a plan, right? Which leads me to my next thing: plan tomorrow today. When you do this, you're deciding the plan for tomorrow the night before, right? And why this works? Well, it creates less decision fatigue, right? And you have more clarity, right? So every time, like, this is the whole thing. Like for me, whenever I was in the military, I used to get my uniform ready the night prior, and it was just sitting out on my chair. Like I already had my rank and everything. It was, my uniform was clean. Let's say like Sunday night, I have to work Monday morning. My uniform is already pressed. It's clean. It has my rank already on there. It has everything in it that I need in my pockets. My belt's already inside of my pants. The only thing that I have to do and my boots are sitting right there. A lot of times I'd have my boxer sitting there too, right? So what that does is, like, I don't even have to think about it. I just have to put that on. And that might be part of the reason why, that's not the only reason, but a uniform, why that's a big thing. Like, just, that's one less thing that you have to think about. That's why a lot of the people that you see, like, the people, the billionaires of the world, they're wearing the same clothes every single day because it's affecting their decision making and everything like that. So whenever you just have things already set in place, all you have to do is wake up the next day and just act, right? So this leads to easier execution. And the next thing is the 2% rule. So if you're having a problem, like when we're just talking about, like, well, you're on the days that you feel like you're struggling, even whenever you have planned today, right? You have a plan. Just do the smallest possible version of what you need to do first, right? Example would be like, if you're trying to read a book and you're just not feeling it for that day, just read one page. Instead of reading for 10 minutes, instead of reading 10 pages or reading a chapter, just read one page, or just write one sentence if you're working on that paper, or just review one idea. But do the smallest version. And when you do that, a lot of times what you'll see is that you're going to build some momentum. And ultimately, that's going to keep you pushing on. And some days, you know what? You're just going to read that one page and that's going to be it. And that's just going to be okay. Because small actions are what maintain identity. Consistency is returning, not perfection. So how do you actually stay consistent without burning out? Well, first thing is you want to plan tomorrow today. You want to reduce those energy leaks, right? So identify what drains you and start cutting it back. Look at your screen time. There's a lot of different things. Every time you're scrolling through TikTok and you're, or like YouTube Shorts, or just consuming YouTube videos, I know so many guys that just sit behind their computer and they're just watching educational content all day. And I'm like, well, what did you actually do with that stuff? Did you actually go out and apply anything? Oh no, man, I'm just going through this course, and once I get through it, I'm just going to go back and apply everything. I'm like, most of the time that doesn't work out. And then what you want to do is you want to set a minimum standard. This is your 2% rule, right? So the smallest version of the habit you'll always complete, right? So on the days where it's tough, just try to do 2%, right? You don't have to do, like, again, you're not doing for 100%. And again, what I try to do, my thing is like, I don't try to do that 2 days in a row, right? I can do it one day, but I can't do it 2 days in a row. If I do it 2 days in a row, then I'm starting to make it more of a habit. And I'm like, need to get back on the horse the best that I can. But you want to try to set that minimum standard for yourself, and then track your returns instead of perfection, right? Don't ask, did I do it perfectly? Ask, did I come back to it today? And again, I know I said the whole thing about like, try not to miss 2 days in a row. But again, if you look at that over a long time horizon, progress is progress, right? So you may have some days where you miss a few, out of the week where you miss 1 or 2 days. But if you look at that over a long time horizon, and you were to compare that month to month, you're probably making a lot more progress than you were last month. And that's the whole thing about, it's not about doing everything right. It's about not leaving the path that you're on. So we talked about mindset, identifying the problem, learning the truth, educating effectively, and staying consistent, right? So this is my Miles framework, right? And hopefully this will be helpful. Again, I may do this again. It was I was worried about technical difficulties as far as like screen sharing and everything, and making sure my script was lined up with the slides and everything the way that I wanted it to. It was probably a little bit all over the place, but again, I just wanted to have the information here. So it's like, why do we need a self education system? Do we even need a self education system? I don't think that you can do whatever you want to do, but for me, what I found so helpful is again having a system, because the system is something that I just have to follow whenever I'm, on the hard days, right? So it just requires me to not have to make those decisions. Um, and ultimately, that's what kind of keeps me accountable and keeps me from making uh, or just not doing the thing at all, right? So, when it comes to mindset, I'm identifying what are those limiting beliefs that I'm having that could be preventing me from being able to do what I'm trying to do, right? So with the whole reading thing, right? Can I actually read books, or is reading is just a skill? That's all it is. For anyone that's watching this channel, that's what I talk about here, is like how to develop the skill of reading, whether that's reading comprehension, building the habit, or just like building the identity around being a reader. It's about what is that mindset like, and then trying to outwork those limiting beliefs that you have, and then stack rocks on the positive side of that scale, by just remembering that like everything, having that growth mindset, that sometimes it's going to be hard. That's what learning is. Learning requires effort. Um, we don't want that doesn't feel good in the moment. It never feels good. Like anytime that you're going through that process of learning and you feel that friction, it's like, man, I don't want to do this. This is like, I really don't know the answer to this question. It doesn't feel comfortable, but it's the necessary thing needed for you to grow and to learn. And then identifying what that problem is, like the true problem that you need to solve, right? So what problem in your life are you having right now that you feel like you need to change? And then going down, like, I'm having a problem with my finances. Okay, well, why do I need to save money? I need to save money. Okay, well, why do I need to save money? Because like I have to pay my credit card off. Okay, well, why do you need to pay your credit card off? Well, I need to pay my credit card off because I'm worried about maybe in the next year or so I want to buy a house, and I want my debt to income ratio to be like not crazy to buy a house. Okay, well, why do you want to buy a house? Why does that matter? Oh, I want to buy a house because I want to have a nice home for my family. Well, why do you want to? And again, I don't want to. You can sit here and do this all day, and you get to the personal stuff, and really start to peel back the onion as to why you think the way that you do, and if it's a problem worth actually pursuing. And then learning the truth, right? So we have objective reality and we have subjective reality, where objective being that, you know, the objective, like the actual truth. And then you have subjective, like the things that my mom and dad told me whenever I was growing up, or the thing that I saw on TV or the news said about this specific thing. And then, in subjective reality, there's always biases. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to distinguish by checking the sources that we're getting our information from. And then we want to educate ourselves effectively by learning from first principles, right? So we want to try to go to the root of where the information started and then kind of reason up from there, whether that's studying the philosophers or whether that's looking in the specific domain that you're learning about and trying to draw your own conclusions based off of what that specific discipline is, and then reason up from there. Now, a lot of times what you're going to do is you're going to find that some of this stuff that has stood the test of time is actually true. But you want to still try to be skeptical of the information and try, because what you're trying to do is learn about the specific thing, and then staying consistent. And consistency, again, it's not about being hyper disciplined. It's about, or being perfect. It's about building a system that works for your brain and works with your brain, not against it. Because a lot of times, what has happened with me is I'll have that perfectionist Tyler that's like standing on my shoulders or like knocking at my door, or demanding me to read all these books and read 50 books, but by the end of the year. And then ultimately, what I do is it just leads to burnout, and I don't want to do it at all, or I procrastinate because there has to be a perfect way that I go through this book. And again, it's about building a system that works for you and minimizing the amount of things that drain your energy, because ultimately that's what's going to save you, like just or not save you, but it's going to allow you to be consistent for the long haul. And so that's the system in a nutshell. Hopefully this was helpful. It's been helpful for me, and hopefully it came across in a way that it feels beneficial. Um, yeah. So if there's any questions, let me know down in the chat. If you're on the replay, drop replay fam down in the comments so I can see that you guys are here on the replay. And I'd love to get your feedback. A system is a system, and it can always be refined and improved. And again, I like to take the scientific method approach, right? So, you with this kind of gives you a plan, and then you go out and you actually conduct what your plan is. And then you're going to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, what was the outcome that happened, and just kind of make an assessment. You're going to analyze the situation, and then you just make those small tweaks that ultimately just kind of just allow you to improve over time. And that's what I like to do, is I like to look at everything in life now as an experiment versus just looking at taking myself super serious and um just getting all kinds of butthurt whenever whenever things just don't go my way, or something, a side of me is shown that shows vulnerability or weakness. Again, I know it's not always the easiest thing to want to put yourself out there and take risk, but a lot of times it's necessary. In the book The Dip, Seth Godin talks about, like, there's all these different things that you can pursue in life, and it's just about picking the thing. And um, you're going to go through the dip at some point in your life. Things are going to get hard when you're any skill that you're trying to learn or anything that you're working on. It's going to seem like you're making a lot of progress. I remember whenever I was learning photography, like I was like, yeah, I'm taking all these pictures. I have this nice camera, or at the time I thought it was a nice camera. Now I'm looking back, I was like, this thing was a piece of junk, but it was still probably a nice camera. But even still, to my standard today, I'm like, no, it's junk. But I was taking all these pictures, and I was like super happy with the way they were coming out. And then I got to a point, it's like, okay, all my pictures are looking the same, and I don't really, I'm not really seeing any improvement in my photos. And really, that's what you have to do, is you have to ride through that dip, right? So you're kind of coasting, and then you just go down into this dip. And anything worth pursuing in life is on the other side of the dip. And so what you got to do is you got to go through that. I think in the 12-week year, they call it the valley of despair, where you're just like, you kind of really don't know what you need to improve, but you're just trying to figure it out. And you're working at it, chipping away at it little by little. And eventually what happens is you get on the other side, and you're so much better. But it does take time. And with that, like, I would say that, you know, don't be in such a hurry with some of these things. And I say easier said than, like, when it comes to learning requires practice, right? And let's just be real with ourselves. Like, when people play baseball, like, some of these folks that have been playing baseball have been playing ever since they were kids. Like, they've wanted to be an athlete their entire life, and they've devoted their entire life to being an athlete. And so that's a skill that had to be developed over time. And it's not ever too late to start, in my opinion. I don't think it's ever too late to start. It's just, you know, you just got to get started on whatever it is. And the first step was just like, adjusting that mindset, that, like, that's a fixed mindset thing. It's like, I can't do that because I can't learn AI because I'm too old. I'm like, or whatever the thing is. It's like, again, if you don't want to learn AI, that's whatever you want to do. But again, that was just something that I dealt with in my family. My parents were like, yeah, we don't really need, we're not going to use it. So why do we need to learn it? I'm like, at some point in your life, you probably do need to learn it. And now they've been receptive to it. And it's just, look, as the years have went on, it's become more normalized in households. And when it was new, it's like people were like anti-AI. And I think a lot of people are using it now in their day to day. But anyways, it's like figuring out, what that those limiting beliefs that you have, and then identifying the problem and really figuring out like, okay, is this the true problem that I need to solve? Because I spent a lot of time trying to doing some personal development stuff, working on things um, that I needed to work on. But really, it was like there was just a few small things that I needed to work on. Like I needed to work on specifically focusing on not having self doubt, and and again, I'm not ever been one that felt like they had self doubt, or just thought to myself, I had self doubt. But when I did the why test and I started breaking things down a layer deeper, I'm like, I do have self doubt. And that's because I was around certain people in my life that may have kind of chipped away at that confidence that I had. Because I don't feel like I mean, maybe I have, I think we all have self doubt and some version of that. But that was one of the biggest things that moved the needle for me recently. It's just like I feel like so much more confident as an individual. And a lot of that stems from is like just the amount of pressure that you put on yourself. For me, I've always put like an immense amount of pressure on myself. And there was times in my life where I was, especially in the military, where my anxiety was really high because I was like, you want to perform at a high level and you put all this pressure on yourself. And like now it's just like you're trying to find that balance between being disciplined, but also just knowing when to relax and chill. And again, I use this in another video. I talk about like life for me is like a marble on a plate, right? You lean too far to one side or to the discipline side, the marble's just going to roll right off the plate, and you're just not going to do anything at all. It's just going to be, it's going to go into chaos. But if you lean to the other side where you're just like lazy and relaxed all the time, well, the marble's going to go off the plate on the other side, and you're just again, life's going to be chaos, and it's not going to work out for you. And the goal is not to keep the marble in the center of the plate perfectly. The goal is to find the balance so that the marble sways back and forth naturally, right? You're going to have moments in your life where you need to be a little bit more disciplined. You're going to have moments in your life where you need to be a little bit more relaxed and chill. And so it's not always, I used to have this all or nothing mentality. Again, I probably, and that is necessary. I got it probably from the military, and it's necessary in a combat situation like that, but it has not served me in be since I've been out of the military. And I've found that just having a growth mindset has been the long term sustainable solution for me. That's really just kind of helped me in so many different areas of my life that I never even really thought would be like I didn't even think some of these things were problems. But I've found that a lot of times whenever I get busy with work, or I just have a lot of different things going on, that when things get really busy and like 5 or 10 years go by, you realize that you really compartmentalize a lot of different things in your life that you just weren't even like a lot of those anxieties that you have are driven by things that have just kind of worn on you over time. And so again, it's about for me, it's just like with this, we're going probably I'm over here rambling now. This is why I had a script, y'all. Again, this last part was just an opportunity for questions and everything like that. Um, but like it's just having self education, being the lifelong learner is like the only thing that I've been able to. That's kind of the identity I've framed myself in now. Excuse me. Um, that of the lifelong learner, so that I'm not afraid to make mistakes, and that again making realistic and reasonable taking reasonable risk, not ones that will ever put me in harm's way or my family in harm's way, but just risk that would just kind of get it's the whole thing, right? I used to run all the time in the military, and you always hear like you got to get outside your comfort zone. You're never going to get faster if you don't run a little bit faster and get your lungs a little bit uncomfortable. And that's where you always have somebody to kind of push you or I've had people that would like, especially in the early days of being in the military, where I was like I didn't enjoy running, but because I had buddies that I went and ran with often, I like actually got to the point where I enjoyed running. And we kind of like competed with each other at certain points to see like what our 3 mile was going to be, to see who would get the best. I was like friendly competition. But anyways, so I'm getting, going off track here, but it was cool being on the stream tonight. Again, I hope that uh, there was no, the technical difficulties. There was not really, I don't think, much technical difficulties, but some of the slides didn't line up. It was like back and forth here. I'm going to try to figure out a better system for this. Again, I hope that I'll put it back up here on the screen real quick. I hope that this self-education system is something that you can take with you. And I'd love to know your feedback. Again, this is the miles system: mindset, identify the problem, learn the truth, educate effectively, and staying consistent. I'd love to know your thoughts, your feedback on it. I appreciate you tuning into the stream. Again, let me know if you're watching live down in the chat that you showed up. And if you're watching on the replay, drop hashtag, or you don't even have to do hashtag, just drop replay fam down in the comments so I know that you checked it out, or just give me your feedback on, how we can improve this stream. What are some of the, if we do with these live streams, I'm open to, like, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this on this channel. But if you're more open to like more loose Q&A type of things, I'm open to that as well. I just really would like to, your feedback on what these live streams should look like for the channel. Because I look at this as an opportunity, because you don't really get all the back and forth that we really get. I get with you all as the audience is like in the comments. So when I engage with your comments, that's like all the engagement we can do. But like when we do these live streams, I know it's an opportunity for you to ask questions, for us to interact with each other and just get to know one another. So I love to know your feedback. Again, I'm not really so much for these live streams, especially. I'm not worried about the algorithm and all that stuff. I'm more worried about what's going to be helpful to you as the viewer, and like how we can just, make it look. I mean, I'm still dealing with this to this day, and I'm just sharing what I've learned along the way. I'm not perfect at all, and I'm still trying to figure this thing out too. But this system has been incredibly helpful for me, because I realized I was having those limiting beliefs, and that we're just kind of, and again, growth mindset. I've read so many books up to this point, and I wanted to share it with you all. And again, I want to just know your thoughts, not to be long winded, but let me know what you think. Give me your feedback, and down in the comments, down in the chat, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Keep learning, keep growing, and I will see you guys in the next video. Y'all have a good night.